Alright, welcome back to my Elona video tutorial series. In today's episode, I'm going to show you the basics of how combat works, since I'm sure that's an exciting thing that a lot of people want to know about as quickly as possible. For today's lesson, I'm leaving the first town, Vernus, and I'm going to this... Oh, never mind. I ran into a random encounter. So like I said, I'm leaving Vernus, and I'm going to this cave right here. This is the Puppy Cave. It's a good place to do a lot of your low-level fighting and just dungeon crawling in general. Most of the dungeons that you go into in Elona will have a random layout, but every time you return to a dungeon it'll have the same layout. The Puppy Cave is different in that every time you enter the Puppy Cave, the layout is different. So immediately I have walked into the Puppy Cave. Right here are the stairs leading out. And already you can see there are some random things surrounding me. There's some webs on the ground. Those will stop you from moving for a few turns if you walk into them. This right here is an enemy. This is an enemy. This is an enemy. This might be an enemy up here. I don't know yet. And that's a random piece of equipment on the ground. So I'm right next to this enemy here. This is a yeek. And if I want to kill it, I'll probably want to use my hammer. And it's very simple. All you have to do, as in most roguelikes, you just walk into the enemy. So I'll just push 1 on the numpad, I hit it with the hammer, and I killed it. Whenever you're in combat, you have a message log at the bottom of the screen here that tells you in detail what's happening in combat at any given time. So most of the time you can just look at your health bar and see how you're doing, but this will let you know if there's anything less intuitive going on. So I'm going to walk over here and kill another enemy. Just walk up to him. 1 hit and he's dead. This guy right here. 1 hit and he's dead. I am apparently a really strong character. Well, this right here, this is a pootit. I'm gonna kill it in 1 hit. This looks like some kind of rabbit. Let's see if I can kill it in 1 hit. Yes, I can. Here's a hermit crab. I probably can't kill it in 1 hit, but let's try. Alright. I hit that one time, and you can see a tiny health bar appeared right underneath the hermit crab. Every enemy that you fight will have that tiny health bar underneath it, I believe. Makes it very useful to tell how you're doing against an enemy. I hit it a second time. You can see this little icon right here means I have scared the hermit crab away and it's now going to try and flee away from me. At this point I could ignore it or I can chase after it. Or, a better idea, I can shoot at it. I can use a ranged attack since it's running from me. You might have noticed in the previous video I picked up this stone, and that's going to serve as my ranged weapon. Now, using a ranged weapon is not exactly as simple as doing a melee attack, but it's still pretty simple. Just press the F key, and you will shoot your ranged weapon at the nearest enemy. Those ranged attacks happen very quickly. You might not have even seen the stone fly by. I'll play that again in slow motion. It turned out this is not an enemy, this is just sort of a random NPC in the dungeon. You run into these periodically. They're kind of neutral characters who won't do anything unless you attack them. You can try to walk into them and you'll just swap places with them. You can attack them if you really want to, but there's not really any need to. As you're wandering around the dungeon, you'll want to grab random items that you see. That's the G key again. There's a flying squirrel in sight. Since I have this enemy in sight, I can just press F and throw my stone at it. Oh, not a flying squirrel. It was a flying frog. Easy mistake, right? And I killed it by throwing rocks at it. Okay, here's a little random encounter that just happened while I was walking around. It's a strange feast. This is a thing that randomly happens to you as you're wandering around the dungeons. As far as I know, there is never any reason at all to leave this behind. When it pops up, just eat it, and you will be completely full. It says down here that my character is bloated. That might sound like a bad thing, but it's not at all. It means that you're just as full as possible, and it'll be a long time before you get hungry again. Opening doors is pretty easy as well. You just walk into them, and you will open it if you can. There's an enemy right behind this door, so kill him. Now you'll notice in this room, there's a pootit right here on the ground, and there's a hermit crab inside as well. So if I press F and try to attack them with my ranged attack, what's going to happen? Well, the game automatically fires at the nearest enemy, but suppose you want to shoot at the hermit crab instead of the pootit, for whatever reason. Because maybe you know this hermit crab is a bigger threat to you, and you know that your dog can handle this thing all on its own. How do you choose a different target to shoot at? There is a way to do this. If you press the L key, it'll show you where your next ranged attack will fire. So it's going to try to attack this enemy right here, and this is the line it's going to take to reach that enemy. Now if you're using a ranged attack, a bow and arrow, a gun, a rock, whatever, you don't have to worry about hitting your allies. As far as I know, that cannot accidentally happen with ranged weapons. Magic is sometimes a different story, and I'll get to that later. After pressing L, I can push 8 and 2 on the numpad to cycle through potential targets. I can target my own dog if I wanted to for some reason, but I don't want to do that. I want to target the hermit crab, so I do this, I highlight it with the little L cursor, then I press F. Never mind. Actually, I press enter. So now I'm targeting the hermit crab, and I press F to shoot at it, and there I go. I just threw a rock at the hermit crab. See, now a second hermit crab has come into view, but I'm still targeting this one that has the life bar under it. As long as I'm still targeting that one, my attacks will pass right through the closer hermit crab and still keep attacking that distant one. But now, since one is right next to me, I'm just going to walk into it and do a melee attack on it. So since I've done a few melee attacks against this hermit crab, what do you think is going to happen if I do a ranged attack now? Am I going to still target the more distant one, or will I attack the one that I've been attacking hand-to-hand this whole time? The answer is it has switched targets to the closer one. That was actually something I didn't know beforehand, so I just learned something myself too. If I want to stop attacking this hermit crab hand-to-hand, I can press L, and again, change my target, cycling through them with 8 and 2, and hitting enter to confirm. If I want to see more of the message log at any time, and see what else has been happening in my combat log here, that is done by pressing the / key. Or wait, was that /? The one that has question mark on the same key. Do that to open or close the message log. Sometimes you run into a door that you can't open right away. I'm trying to walk into this one and I'm having trouble. I think it's possible that you might find locked doors in the dungeons sometimes, and there are lockpicks in the game, but as far as I know, just in the random dungeons, you don't run into outright locked doors. You can just try to open them, and eventually you'll get it. They just serve as sort of an obstacle sometimes. Now, suppose you walk into a room and you see something that's way too threatening. Like if I could not handle that goblin right there, maybe I want to close the door and get away from it. You need to use a C key, and since I'm next to 2 doors right now, I need to indicate the up direction, and I will close that door. Keep in mind, Elona is case sensitive. If you press lowercase c, it just opens up your character sheet, but a C closes a nearby door. Now, I just came into a room that is probably going to be too much for me to handle. You can see my health is getting really low right here. And in order to restore your health, you either need healing spells or healing potions, something like that. I don't think I have anything that can help me in that regard. Now, there might be wands or something else, some other magical item that could heal me if I had that on me, but I don't think I have anything that helps. If you are wondering, food does not heal you, I don't believe. I think all it does is restore your hunger, so don't look to that for your healing. I'm going to try to run away from this room, see if that works for me. These enemies are really fast, so they're able to chase me pretty well. This is another random event you get a lot. Priests will come by and give you a blessing. You get the Holy Protection Blessing, which will show up on your character sheet. I was never too clear exactly what it does, but it happens pretty frequently. Apparently it gets you protection from hexes. So I've managed to get away from all of those enemies that were chasing me. Now I can close these doors right here and just rest for a while, and that'll restore my health. So if you press the R key, you will try to read things. If you press a R, you will start resting, and that'll generally just have you wait around in place until your health is restored, or until something interrupts you. That's generally the most common way that you're going to get your health back, is just resting for a while. Now you can see here, my character has become burdened just from picking up random equipment that's lying around the dungeon. This means that my movement speed is reduced. That happens as you get more and more burdened. Eventually this will have an exclamation mark next to it if I pick up enough other things. Then it'll change into overweight. And once you reach the point of overweight, not only do you move a lot slower, but you take damage every time you move. So you don't want to get to that point. Okay, so I was editing this video and I felt like I should make a little amendment here. I mentioned that when you get burdened, your speed gets reduced. Well, you might be thinking, okay, now that I'm playing this game, I realize, well, this is a turn-based game, right? Every time I move around, a turn is taken. So, what does that mean when your speed is reduced? You still travel through squares at the same rate, right? Basically, the way speed works is that if you have a higher speed, you sometimes get to take more turns than a creature with lower speed. So for example, this bat over here to my left has a much higher speed than me. So if I try to attack the bat, sometimes it looks like it's moving more than one space at a time. That's because the bat's speed is so high that it moves more than one tile in the time it takes me to travel one tile. So if I attack the bat, well, if that fight had lasted longer, the bat might have been able to attack me more than once in the time it took me to make one attack against the bat. To demonstrate the opposite effect, here's a snail, and if I just wait around, or if I wander around, you see that snail, both myself and that wild sheep get to take a lot more turns than the snail does, because the snail's speed is so very slow. So, while the sheep is still roughly my speed, the snail is much slower, so I can wait around for several turns before the snail gets anywhere near me. And notice, the snail just attacked me. Let's see how many turns I can wait before the snail gets to attack me again. 1, 2, 3... 3 turns every time the snail takes one turn. Roughly. Let me try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 turns, and then the snail gets to go once. It's because my speed stat is so much higher than the snail's. That's how speed works in Elona. Lesson learned. Okay, so I've killed a couple more enemies right here, and they dropped a bone and a piece of meat. The bone is kind of similar to the eye, in that it's just a random thing that you can pick up and sell. But the meat is something a little more important. That's a corpse right there. Corpses will rot fairly quickly as you wander around the dungeon. They're an okay short-term source of food, but if you eat them uncooked, you might get sick. Possibly. That's a risk that you run with raw meat. Now here you can see the rabbit corpse that I picked up has rotted. If I eat it now, I will definitely get sick, so there's really no use for it, nothing to do but drop it. Okay, I've just run into a really tough enemy. This Cupid of Love right here in the puppy cave might kill me. I'm down to 6 health right now. The only thing I can really do is try to get away from it. But it's shooting me with arrows. Let's see if I can escape. I just got killed by a boar. What a great opportunity to talk about what happens when you die. So this input box will pop up immediately every time you die. This is your chance to leave a dying message. So I type in, Elona is hard. Now, the way dying messages work, if I understand it correctly, is pretty interesting. Basically, at the moment you die, this death message will be sent out over the internet to every person that is playing Elona at the moment. So if you see a notification in your message log that says somebody somewhere has died and they left a certain message, that's actually a real person elsewhere in the world who just died in their game at that moment. Now, when you die, you'll be given 2 options, either crawl up or lie on your back. I'm gonna confess here, I have always picked crawl up. I believe if you pick lie on your back, then any progress from your last save point will be undone. So this death will technically not have happened, but you'll also have lost some progress. I think that might be the case, but I kind of don't want to take a chance on that. I'm going to pick crawl up and show you what happens. As you respawn in your home, you will have lost some gold, and also you will have dropped some of the items from your inventory onto the ground. If you die in a dungeon other than the puppy cave, you can go back to wherever you were before and retrieve those items. If you died in a town, same thing. If you died on the world map, same thing. Since I died in the puppy cave, when I return to the floor I was on, it will have a completely different layout and my equipment will be gone. So that is the danger of dungeon crawling in that cave. And this also made me tired. This is different from sleepy. That just means sort of like worn out, like a little overexerted. It's something that just fades in time if you don't use a lot of skills or anything like that. But that's pretty much it when you die. It's not too bad of a punishment. So speaking of death, here's another thing that just happened. My dog was just killed by monsters in the puppy cave. So I'm going to leave the puppy cave. To get my dead dog back, I can go to the pub here. I can talk to the bartender, which is this guy on the left, and select call back my allies. I can resurrect my dog. That would cost me 540 gold pieces. I only have 473, so I can't do that right now. I'm just going to be without a dog for a little while. Okay, here's an important thing you're going to need to know about. Etherwind. This is happening right now in my game. I believe this happens every 3rd month of the year. So in the 9th month, in the first few days, you're going to get Etherwind happening. Same in the 12th month and the 3rd month and the 6th month. This is extremely dangerous. You do not want to be out in the world when Etherwind is happening. And it happens for several days. Now, for educational purposes, I'm going to have to show you what happens when you're out in it. I'm walking around on the world map here. Walking around. Hold on. Okay, I starved to death. Intermission. So I'm walking around on the world map while the Etherwind is going on. A couple days have gone by now. Still walking around. And right there, that little cloud that just popped up, that means I just mutated. I just got ether disease. So that changed my feet into hooves. Now these will be random effects, like all kinds of different things can happen to you when you mutate. So since I have hooves instead of feet now, my speed is increased by 22, that's this stat down here, but I can't wear boots. So some mutations are positive, some of them are negative, and some of them are kind of a trade-off. Like in this case, I can't wear any armor on my feet, but I'm a lot faster. So it's possible that this mutation could help me, if that's the way I want to play the game. Anyway, now that you've seen what happens, to avoid the Etherwind, basically be near a town at the beginning of every 3rd month. It's very difficult to remember, but it's something very important. Go to the innkeeper of the nearest town as soon as the Etherwind starts, and choose Take Me to the Shelter in the dialogue options. You'll be taken to this little room, and just allowed to pass the time while the Etherwind blows. You can sleep in these beds. There'll be a random skill book that you can read here, like if you want to read how to become a performer, that's something I can do while this Etherwind is blowing. Or there's a training machine right here that you can use to increase your strength or other stats. Just do whatever you can to pass the time. If you want, you can hold down 5 on the numpad and just stand there until the Etherwind is over. The way you find out, you look at the weather report on the top left right here. It says morning right now instead of morning Etherwind. That means the Etherwind is over and I can leave and go back about my life as normal. One more thing I would like to say about combat. When I was in the puppy cave, I found this bow, so I can equip that and use an arrow. You need to have some kind of ammo in your ammo slot in order to use a ranged weapon like that. Now what I will say is, this arrow that you equip, or whatever ammo you have, you never need to replenish it. this thing will be an infinite ammo source for you. So you just want to pick something that does good damage and use that one all the time. However, if you go to a blacksmith, there's a dialogue option that says I need ammos for my weapon, but the blacksmith just told me that I don't have anything I can reload in my inventory. This dialogue option only applies to certain very special types of ammo that can be loaded with an unusual type of limited ammo, if that makes sense. It's something that you rarely encounter. Just know that if you're using a ranged weapon like a bow, the ammo in it is going to be infinite. Now, the ammo that you use will not always be super picky. For example, there are laser guns and traditional guns in this game. You can equip any of those with either bullets or energy cells, and they work on either weapon. However, an arrow will not work with the repeating crossbow that I just found. I need bolts for that. So that does me no good. This combat tutorial turned out a fair bit longer than I expected it to be. Next time, I'm going to talk to you about items that you'll find in the dungeons, and then maybe we'll get to talk about quests and making money. Tune in for the next video. Maybe some other random encounters.